So welcome to what is very likely to be the last Cosmic Divide, at least on this channel, because my contract is about to expire with Acend, or probably has done by the time that you're watching this video. And that's the way it is, unfortunately. So it does seem like this will probably be the last Cosmic Divide that you are watching right now on the Acend channel. What happens in the future? Will I have another podcast in the future? Maybe with another esports org or on my own channel? I don't know as of yet. But if you are worried about that, then don't worry, because you know I'm still on Plat Chat quite a lot, and I've also have the VOD now as another podcast. So I'm on plenty of stuff. You'll still see me around, I'm sure. But obviously it won't be kind of my solo venture. And sort of doing whatever I want. However, before I want to go into, some of your questions that I thought, we'd just do a little intimate, just me and some questions for this episode. But before we get into that, I would like to just thank Acend for, everything really. Because in 2022, it was June in 2022, when Crimson got in touch with me, who's the guy who's, kind of like runs, a lot of the operations here at Acend. And he got in touch with me about wanting to sign as a content creator. And at the time, I was very new to this whole thing. I didn't really know what I was doing. And I'm very fortunate, I think, that it was Acend that, were kind of the first org to contact me, essentially. And I was very happy to, get on board and start making some content for them. And the reason I was so happy that it was Acend, looking back now, is because had I gone to maybe a different org, maybe even a bigger org potentially as well, there might have been a lot thrown at me that I didn't really know or understand or what to do right at that time. But Acend were very hands-off, very happy to just kind of let me do my own thing and kind of figure out in my own time. And eventually I think we got to that point. And the thing I would say about Acend that I appreciate most, is that they were very happy to just let me kind of, do whatever I wanted, right? With this podcast, there's no like, oh, can you, make sure to mention this or whatever. No, just talk about whatever you want, right? Talk about whatever you want, bring on whoever you want. They just let me have a lot of creative freedom and trusted me to do that. And yeah, I appreciate that a lot. So to Ben and Crimson and everyone at Acend, like, it's been a good run. Like a lot of things in esports, don't last that long if we're being real. So this, I've been with Acend since 2022. I mean, that's a fair run. That is a fair amount of time. So yeah, appreciate all of that. Obviously sad that it is coming to an end, but we'll see what the future holds. I don't know what the future holds, if you're wondering, by the way. I don't know what will happen next. I don't have another team lined up, but make sure you just bug everyone in esports that to come and pay TMV. But what we are going to do today is we are going to take a look at some of your questions, for me, and talk about, what you want to know. So this is from people in my Discord. We'll start here with Schmin, who said, what will I be up to in the off season? And the honest answer is generally this time of year for me, the autumn into the winter, is sports time, right? Football is going on, and the NFL is on, and those things, when they're on, I tend to watch quite a lot and consume a lot of that kind of stuff. So I'll be watching a lot of that, I assume. Otherwise, it'll mostly be kind of chill. I don't really have any big plans for the off season. With the way the calendar is structured now, in 2023 or whatever, right? And we had that massive long off season. It was like you maybe could come up with some kind of grand plan for something you want to do, but now it's kind of like, it's the off season, but we've got Ascension now. Game changes coming up. There'll be some off season tournaments, and then apart from maybe like December, there'll be stuff going on for the most part, probably. So yeah, it's just gonna be chilling, watching sports. And yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. If you're talking about like content-wise, I don't know. I always figure every off-season content-wise, I just figure out, right? I talk about whatever I want to talk about. Right now I'm doing stat stuff, but I have some other stuff that I kind of want to generally talk about as well. So yeah, that's my off-season. Let's move on to the next question, which is Epos. Will I join Wolves now as a content creator? So to be completely honest with you, I have been in touch with Wolves, sort of. There's been a little bit of dialogue back and forth, but nothing concrete, nothing big, nothing crazy. They did obviously send me an esports jersey, the Toronto jersey, which was quite nice from them, which I'm actually going to get framed because it is a very nice jersey. But yeah, will I join Wolves? I do not know. I do not know. But yeah, we'll see. I honestly have no idea what my next thing will be. Carlos asks, is Viper's pick rate going to be at an all-time high with the recent patch? Now, I was thinking about this a little bit. All-time high, I actually don't think so, because I think Viper's all-time high pick rate is in the high 70s, which is really very high, right? Like you're talking about really only Omen now, Jet in 2021, and like close with Chamber in 2022 is like the only agents that have had more than Viper her peak. I don't think it will be that high, mainly because of the map pool. I think if the map pool was like had Icebox and Breeze in it as well at the same time, then maybe yes, right? But with Icebox and Breeze not currently being in the map pool, I think Viper will get above 50% if I had to guess, if things stay the same as they are now, but I wouldn't have thought they'll get above that if I had to guess. But that's just a guess. It could be I expect it to be pretty high at the very least. It will be nerf worthy high, in my opinion, if I had to guess. Priya asked, am I covering anything about the Ascension tournament? So yeah, I started streaming yesterday. I will stream today as well, and I'm not right. The game's on Wednesday. I think I'm streaming some Wednesday. Blah blah blah. Go on. Yes, I will stream the Ascension tournaments. Not all of it. Still not all of it, but yes. I might be streaming the Ascension tournament as you're watching this now. When will I oil up, Mr. Tory? Well, I said I'd oil up if Wolves won a Masters, and they almost did. That might continue going forward. Or whatever esports org I sign with. Maybe whoever signs me, if they win a tournament, maybe I'll oil up then as well. But the thing is, like, it has to be something special, right? It can't just be like, oh, something small. Although I did have that bet of Fnatic, the 50 gifted with Fnatic. That would have been kind of crazy. Had that Fnatic come back and win the reverse sweep. So that would have probably been worth it, but Ethan had other plans apparently. So thank you, Ethan. Ghost asks, have you ever considered or gotten offers to work as an analyst for a Challengers or VCT team? So those of you who haven't been around for a very long time on this channel might not know this. I haven't told this story a ton, but I have told it before, which is that during 2022, before Champs, I actually got a message from BZK from Loud, who wanted me to help them out with some analysis back then for Loud for their Champs run. Obviously, Loud ended up actually winning that tournament anyway. I said no at the time, and it's funny now, as we come towards the end of this. At that time, I had only kind of just signed my contract with Acend, and as I said, as someone who, was very new to it all back then, I was like, I'm not sure I'm allowed to do other work for another, team. Now, because Ascend weren't actually at that Champs or whatever, I'm honestly, knowing Ascend now, they probably wouldn't have cared that much. But yeah, I did get an offer, but I turned it down because at the time I was like, well, I'm not really sure I'm allowed to. And I didn't want to upset Ascend, right? I didn't want to like, oh yeah, let's sign a contract with Ascend. Oh, by the way, I'm also now being an analyst for Loud. That just felt like, a couple weeks into me signing with you. That would have felt a little bit strange. So I didn't accept for that reason. Otherwise I would have done it. But yeah, looking back, that would have been fun. Other offers in terms of that, I think from that point on, people kind of understood that I didn't really want to do like coaching stuff. Look, I'm sure if I, was like, hey, I'm looking for a team to be a coach, I'm sure I could maybe get on a team, maybe not as a head coach for a tier 1 team, but maybe like an assistant coach, right? Or, maybe a head coach for like a tier 2 team or something like that. I'm sure it's possible that I could do that, but do I want to do that is a bit of a different question. And actually, there's some other questions about that later on. So yeah, I have gotten off a big offer from Loud before, and honestly, maybe there are some others, because I tend to be quite bad at checking my emails and DMs and stuff like that. So maybe there is others that I'm just not as I'm just not aware of. What has been the best experience from Ascend as an org? Well, as I kind of said, as a general point, I would say that it was that Ascend were very laid back, very chill, you know, didn't like demand that I do too much. In general, it's kind of an overall thing. Obviously, I went out to Sofia with Ascend as well, which was quite fun to, you know, meet people. Probably the best experience from that was playing, God, what's the game called? You know, where you have like people who are like murderers and stuff like that, like, you know, Wink Murder or whatever. We played a lot of that. Wolf. We played a lot of that at like nighttime there, you know, with a big group, probably a group of 20-ish people. That was a lot of fun. That was honestly a lot of fun. And, you know, we were staying up playing till like 3 in the morning, whatever, playing those games. And honestly, that was just so much fun. It was so much fun to do that. So yeah, that was a good experience for sure. Dawn asks, is OCE cooked in Val? I think your problem with saying is OCE cooked in Val is you got to understand the expectations, I suppose, because, you know, OC comparatively to, you know, other regions in Pacific, you know, its population size isn't that big. It's kind of like gaming culture, you know, whilst it has some, maybe isn't, you know, as prominent, or at least like fully competitive gaming culture isn't, you know, going to be as prominent somewhere like Korea or something, right? So, you know, when you're competing with a small population where the culture isn't as kind of defined for like competitive esports, like, yeah, it's probably not going to be, you know, that common that like a team from OC is going to do that well. I mean, Autumn's in tier 1. I think that should be your expectation, really, is, you know, can people from OC make it into tier 1? And if you think that, and if that is happening, and it's happened to Autumn, and maybe it'll happen to others in the future, then I think that's what you should probably deem your success on if you're from OC, rather than being like, oh, an OCE team can't win Ascension, because I do think that that's probably not as realistic. But, you know, miracles have happened before. Maybe it will happen again. Okay, Ori, the Albania React leader. Dear thinking TMV man's Valorant, if you had to pick one comp to use for every map, which would be the best and which would be the worst? And when will you oil up, Mr. Tory? To answer the second point, I kind of already you know, talked about that a little bit. It has to be something special. Otherwise, it'll just be a bit of an anticlimax. But when it does happen, I'll try and, you know, make sure that it's a big deal. If you had to pick one, by the way, actually, let me talk about the history of that for a second, because this is always something that I find so interesting, that a lot of people now, this has kind of become a thing, right? Like, oh, TMV oil up. And as far as I remember, and maybe some of you know better than me on this and can remember better than me on this, but as far as I remember, this all came about literally because one person started commenting on all of my videos, when are you gonna oil up? As far as I remember, that's how this started. But it's been going on so long at this point that I can't fully remember if that is how it started. But I'm pretty sure I didn't start this. I'm pretty sure that it wasn't like me, like, oh, if they win this, I'll oil up. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have said that. And I'm fairly sure I remember that this actually did just come about because whoever it was, and I don't even know who it was, if you're still here watching, if you are, comment in the video, you know, comment on this podcast, when will I oil up? Because I'm pretty sure that it was just someone commenting on every single video, and then that became like such a big thing that other people then started chiming in, like, oh yeah, TMV, when are you gonna oil up? And then it was like, why is everyone jumping in on this? And now it's like a big thing, and well, maybe one day it'll happen, maybe it won't, who knows? If you had to pick one comp to use for every map, though, which would be the best and which would be the worst? Well, given the current patch that we just had, there would be some absolute slam dunk picks I would have in there, which would be Omen, Viper, Yoru. Let's start there. I think that those three are kind of non-negotiable. Then I think there's a fourth spot that is fairly non-negotiable, and that is between Sova, Fade, but maybe Teo? We're going to have to see how the new patch plays out. But part of me did start to think, like, Teo like, would I rather have Teo or Sova? With the cooldowns, like, I actually could see a world where Teo is actually pretty good again. So one of those three would certainly make up the fourth slot, which would be a solo initiator slot. And then you're probably looking at a fifth slot that is hard to decide. If I had to pick between the initiators, I think the safe pick is probably Sova, because there are some maps, you know, if a bigger map comes into the rotation, right, a Breeze, an Icebox, maybe even Abyss, right, like out of like Tail Fade Sova's probably going to be the best and still will be. I know Sova has like his bad maps like Split or whatever, but you know, I feel like that's going to be easier to overcome for Sova than it is maybe for, you know, Fade to be good on Breeze, for instance, right? So yeah, I feel like Sova would be the safest of those options, even though he wouldn't be optimal on all of the maps. But yeah, let's go for Sova for now. And then the fifth slot is very, very interesting because there's three different directions I think you could go in. One is playing a duelist, right? And going, okay, let's play another duelist. Who would you go with? Would you go Raze? Probably Neon, maybe, but after the nerfs, maybe. Would you go full DRX and go Waylay? I probably wouldn't, because you know how I feel about Waylay. Then you've got kind of the just picking a Sentinel, right? And running with that. And if you were to pick a Sentinel, it would probably be across all maps. It would probably be Cypher, I think, again for kind of the big map thing. You know, it gives you something on attack. Probably would be Cypher if I had to guess, across all maps. And then the third option is playing another Initiator, right? And playing no Sentinel whatsoever and going for another Initiator. That I don't love as much. I think probably the safest way of playing it is Cypher, but you would have to have a good attack side. You have to have a very good Viper player. If you had a good Viper who like had good aim, like if I've got Nats on my team, then I feel good about going for like a Cypher as well and saying, Nats, you open up the map elsewhere if it's not working with the Yoru. But yeah, you'd have to get a little bit. You'd have to have a good Viper player lurking on the other side of the map, or a good Cypher player lurking on the other side of the map as well. If they weren't good fraggers, then I'd probably want either a double initiator or a double duelist. And the worst comp to play on every single map has to be like Reyna. Let's start with like Reyna, Phoenix, ISO, probably, right? Let's start with like those three. What else? What else would be bad? Obviously, we're playing no smokes, because that is going to be bad. You're going to get cooked a lot playing no smokes. Your defense side playing the... I also can't... Like, I don't want to go just like 5 duelists, because I do think it would be... Like, maybe I'll put a chamber in there as well. I want them to have, like, no dive element to their comp as well, right? Because then how would you play attack? How do you play attack if they just, like, say, do an exec, and you have, like, no dive and no smokes? Like, you simply cannot win on attack, right? So let's go Reyna, Chamber, Phoenix, ISO, and then I kind of need like one agent who also cannot enter a site and also doesn't have... I guess Phoenix does give you some smokes and ISO, but not really. Man, what do we want here? What's a good agent to pick? Maybe like Deadlock or something? Deadlock could wall you out of certain situations, but it is still see-through. And Deadlock doesn't have a ton of synergy with the other agents, so I do think that that's an okay choice. That might be somewhere around the worst. Let me know in the comments if you have something that you think it would be worse than that. Maybe just going 5 duelists would be worse. Maybe now going 5 initiators would be even worse. But yeah, let's go for something like that. Okay, next question is, what really truly happened that night with Sideshow in Paris? What happened that night with Sideshow in Paris? I mean, I've already kind of described what happened, to be honest. But if you want the story again, went to Paris, obviously saw Sideshow at the venue. We watched the second game together, me, Sideshow, and Bren from kind of the stands. Went back in this little cart, not cart, we went back in a little truck full of the kind of production people to the hotel, which was about 10-minute drive or whatever. Went to the hotel. obviously record. I mean, you saw part of it, like you can see part of it. The Vodfather stuff, that's out there when I'm with Sideshow in his room. He actually forgot his key to his room, so he had to his where his hotel room was miles away from the reception. This was like a gigantic hotel in like the middle of nowhere as well. So we walked all the way to his room, had to walk all the way back, get a key, walk all the way back again, got into his room. Interestingly as well, we could have been anyone, right? We went to the reception. He said, "Oh, I've lost my key." They said, "Oh, what room?" And he gave him the room number, and then he was like, "Oh, Wilkinson," and he was just like, "Yeah." He could have been anyone, and they would have let anyone into his room, which isn't great. But so yeah, we got back into the room. Then because our producer for the pod, we had told the producer like a later time than like because the games finished so fast that day that we got there much earlier than we thought we would. So the producers, wasn't there for our Vodfathers podcast. And so we ended up sitting there and playing. Well, Sideshow and Shio basically played battleships for some reason. And we played some games like Flag Path and Global, and that's what we did essentially. And then after the podcast, Sideshow was like, "Okay, go get a train back." There was no trains, so it was like, "Okay, here's an Uber back." First Uber canceled on us. Second Uber eventually got there, and then I had a hellish drive back that took way too long. And the Uber driver was not happy. Anyway, next question. There was nothing else happened. I guarantee it. Can you give us a tutorial on the enlightened Viper for ranked gameplay you're always talking about? So I gave this tip on stream the other day, but just to reiterate it for you, if you want to play Viper in ranked, solo Viper obviously is very bad, but double controller Viper, very strong on a lot of maps, right? So what you do is you hover over a duelist, right? A Reyna or an ISO, a Jet, whatever it is, right? Common ranked pick, whatever you want, and then get someone else to lock in smokes, and then last second change to Viper, play double smokes, and then just do lurks and do take pro setups, right? And just lurk setups. And just do those setups that pros use to lurk around the map. Don't use your smokes as like a proper true smoke. Lurk around the map. And what I would say is like early in the half, what you're going to do is your teammates are going to go somewhere else and you're going to use your wall and lurk with your wall. Right? And what you're going to see in those like first 4 to 5 rounds is you're noticing how aggressive are your opponents, how quickly do they rotate. Okay? If they're a team that rotates straight away off noise, then you're just going to keep putting up that wall, walking behind it, tell your teammates to make some noise somewhere, and then just call them back, take the A site, win the game, right? If they're a team that doesn't rotate that much and is more passive and kind of just, sticks around and waits, then what you're going to do is just first couple of rounds, you're going to find out that information, you're going to see what they're doing against you, and then you're going to understand. Because the thing is, people in rank, they don't really change, right? They play every round very similar to what they were doing before in terms of general style, right? They might do slightly different things, but how they play as players, like how fast they rotate and stuff like that, generally stays the same. So what you can do if they're just sitting there is then just go with the team on the other side of the map and just put up your Viper setup still. They're just going to stay there watching it, and you just go and hit the other side of the map, right? And you'll feel good about where you are. So that's generally how I think you use it on attack. Obviously on defense, you just you have good map awareness, right? Like if you're playing Viper, you do need to have good map awareness, particularly for the defense side and attack side as well. But yeah, as long as you've got decent map awareness and going and doing general good stuff, and I would say generally just be whatever. I would say most ranked players play way too aggressive, right? So if you are one of those players and you want to play Viper, just dial it back a bit, right? Just think in your head like, whatever you would naturally want to do, give yourself 5 seconds of waiting instead. And just be a bit more patient. And you will commonly find yourself against people, like particularly on a map like Bind, right? If you put the normal Bind setup down A, people in rank do not know what to do with that. They will just swing through the wall and give you free kills. Like, trust me, I have played enough games of Viper on Bind to know they will just swing through that wall. Or they will just completely give up the site. There is no alternative, right? They will just give you all the space or try and deny it at the first part of it. And you will just kill them and win, right? So on certain maps, it's a free win if you play it correctly. Do I believe in Albania? Yes, I do believe in Albania. Again, I don't even know how did the Albania thing start? I think it's just because I mentioned once that I like the Albanian flag, which I do. It is a good flag. You can see it here. It's very imposing. Little story for you here. Me and my flatmates at uni, 3 of us were quite into vexillology. Still can't say that word, but you know, the study of flags and like, you know, what's on them and stuff. So we liked that. So we wanted to get a flag for the flat that we kind of liked and agreed upon, and my nomination was Albania. They thought it was a little bit too imposing, and for those who didn't know it was the Albania flag, maybe they would think it was, you know, kind of sus. Which we eventually did agree upon. Yeah, maybe it's a bit too imposing for what we wanted, really. So we ended on the Marshall Islands, which if you don't go and Google the Marshall Islands flag, nice flag, kind of peaceful flag, you know, gives a good vibe. And that Marshall Islands flag was, yeah, just above our TV in our living room. But my nomination was the Albania flag. Next question is, why are Ascend leaving Valorant exactly? Well, I mean, I don't fully know, you know, I'm not the one who made that decision, but from what I understand, from what Ben and Crimson have said to me, is that, you know, it's not necessarily that, you know, like they're completely out on Valorant as a game. They think it's a dead game or whatever. And honestly, given the changes that are probably coming in 2027, maybe Ascend will come back. I don't know, but yeah, it's just that, you know, tier 2, as it is right now, tier 2 isn't a very good investment in Valorant. And hasn't been for a while. And so they want to move in other directions instead. Again, maybe in 2027, if the scene opens up and it feels like actually this is a decent investment chance and you have a decent chance of, you know, doing pretty well in this game, then it's probably going to be a big enough game to try, as far as I'm aware. But you'd have to have Ben really for that one. What would it take for you to try coaching? Is that you are comfortable streaming and not interested, or are you interested but it isn't worth it monetarily? I do get what you mean, Fluttershy lover. Yeah, so I mean, again, this is like, imagine you had a job. Well, some of you probably will, hopefully, but imagine you're in a job that you like, that pays decently well. You know, to move to another job, you're probably going to need not just like a raise, but a significant raise, right? And that's kind of where I'm at. And realistically, as I kind of said before, would I instantly become a head coach of like a good tier 1 team that's paying quite a lot? Probably not, right? I'm probably, if I was to go into coaching, I'd probably have to, you know, earn my stripes a bit, right? And show that, like, you know, I can do this. Which I just think I'm not. Yeah, that would just take time, you know, not doing a job. Like, I like doing this job, right? And I've seen, and what's interesting about this job, right, and what I do in particular with my channel is what I do with my channel, right, for the most part, like VOD reviewing pro games, it's not rocket science, right? Like, you know, there's a couple people doing it now on YouTube or whatever, but I was probably one of the first to kind of consistently do it for a while. And it isn't rocket science, right? Like it isn't. You might disagree on some slight points here and there, but for the most part, you're going to watch a game and you're going to come away with similar takeaways, for, you know, most likely. And the thing is, like, a lot of people before me, I think, you know, even Sideshow, I think, you know, did do, you know, they hopped in and out of doing it. They dipped their toe in the water a little bit of kind of like, oh yeah, here's a little VOD review, whatever, right? They'll do it every so often, but no one did it consistently. And I was kind of the first person to do it consistently. And I just find it very, like, you know, at this point, I've got so good at doing it that it doesn't feel as much work as it probably would be for other people, right? Because I can watch a game once and kind of remember, you know, and instantly kind of recognize, well, this is the theme of the game, right? This is what I'm going to mainly kind of focus on. And then to focus on that, and, you know, these were the rounds that, you know, that happened in. And I can watch a game once and then very quickly on a VOD review, very quickly understand like what I'm going to talk about and, you know, what rounds I need to talk about that for. And, you know, obviously, like, my editing isn't maybe the most successful thing about my channel or whatever, but that's because, you know, I need to get stuff out every day, right? Or every day-ish. And so, yeah, I'm just very comfortable with where I'm at because I find my job fun. No, that's not to say I would find parts of coaching fun as well, but coaching, like, is stressful. Coaching is stressful and it's a lot of work, right? Like, I understand that from doing my degree. Like, I've coached football teams, right? It's a lot of work behind the scenes, right? For not much payoff a lot of the time. That's just the way being a coach is, and like it's just the way it is. And so, yeah, in like an ideal world, if I was gonna be a coach, it would probably be kind of like what Anders does, right? Where Anders is remote and he just kind of helps, chips in, but isn't like a head coach, or at least currently, at least he wasn't with G2. That's probably where I would kind of be as well, right? Is I wouldn't really want to move necessarily either, which obviously if you're going to be a head coach, particularly of a tier 1 team, you're going to probably have to move. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. It just doesn't really make sense for me right now, but who knows? If someone comes with a lot of money, then what I'd probably say yes, I guess, maybe. When will we see you queue in Throw City again? Yeah, probably sometime after Ascension, I would have thought. I'll queue at some points. Let's revive Throw City. Let's get it back going. For teams with high expectations that failed to live up to them, what move would you be most excited to see, or would make you think they could actually win a trophy this year? So winning a trophy, I mean, winning a trophy, there is luck involved with winning a trophy, right? Whether that's who you come up against, whether that's NRG winning, like 5 overtimes in a row, right? Like there is luck to winning a trophy, right? And sometimes that is not fully in your control, or you can be kind of as just a good team and see where you go from there. There's also map pool, the meta suits better teams, right? Like Valorant, as we've seen, is a very hard game to predict who's going to win a trophy because the level is all quite close in terms of the level of teams, and there's a lot of other factors, like map pool, like the meta, whatever it is, and a bit of luck when you're actually there at the tournament, that makes you, the team that actually does end up winning the trophy. So I wouldn't feel confident saying that anyone is going to win a trophy next year, no matter what. Now, of the teams you listed there, Sen, Vitality, GenG, EDG, let's kind of go through them. Obviously, GenG, like, have blown up their team reportedly, right? Like, I think it's only Ash and Foxy9 who are left. Their coaches are gone, right? Like, so that is a full rebuild for GenG. So honestly, I don't know who GenG could bring in that would make me like feel better about their team than they were before, right? So I don't know what to think about GenG right now. I almost think like push them to a different stratosphere. Next up, let's talk about EDG. For EDG, I just think that a couple things happened, right? One, they thought that they had to play Yoru, and Kang wasn't that great on Yoru, even though he showed some improvements in champs. It wasn't amazing. Either they need to, I think they should keep their 4 players, their key 4 players, that they've kind of always had. I think keep them, honestly, because we know that they're good enough to win a tournament in Valorant, and they are all good players in their own right. I think they need to find someone who is either very, very good at Yoru, but also good at other agents as well, because Yoru, I do think at some point, Yoru will get nerfed again, trust me. So, you can't just be a Yoru one trick, but finding someone who's either good at Yoru or saying to Kang, like, hey, during this whole offseason, I just want you to play non-stop Yoru and get so good at this agent that, that fixes that problem for us. That, I think, would be one direction I go in. And then they just need to find a 5th that is equally, and figure out, like, what do they want that 5th to do, essentially. But if I was EDG, I would honestly just keep it together. Because are you realistically going to find significantly better players than the players you've already got? I would argue most likely no, right? Because they are still making it to tournaments. Whilst this year didn't go great, it wasn't a complete disaster, right? They did make champs, which is kind of like your first goal, you might say. So yeah, that's what I do for EDG. For Vitality, it looks like Les might leave. Looks like they're probably going to keep Durka and Kicks, we'll see. They also have Sayonara there, who apparently is a very good player, but won't be 18 at the very start of the season. I think for them, look, when you've got Durka, you'll still have a pull, right? Like people, like ambitious players who, like people are going to be looking for, they'll see that you've got Durka on the team, and I think people will still go like, this is a team that wants to win, right? So as long as they keep Durka, I still think they should be able to attract talent. And then if they can attract talent, I think, yeah, they could be in a good spot. I think for them, they need to understand, they need to find an IGL, right? That's their most important thing, is finding an IGL. And we've seen it work now in multiple ways, right? We've seen kind of, you got the Fnatic side of it where the IGL is kind of the clear leader, and that Boaster then kind of dictates where the rest of the team goes. But we've also seen teams like Paper Rex, even to an extent you might say NRG, where the IGLing, whilst it happens, is maybe less of a focal point of the team, and you can still find success with that, right? So I think Vitality need to understand where they are and what they want to do with that, right? Do they want an IGL leader, or do they want to have, more of kind of a relaxed IGLing style and just, kind of rely on everyone chipping in a bit more and kind of go from there? For Sen, they're in an interesting spot, because it's like with EDG, when I said, like, are you realistically going to find anyone better? For Sen, you could say somewhat the same, but I do think the answer to some of their positions is, well, maybe, right? Like, maybe you could find someone better. I think Sen, obviously Zekken, and I would say John as well, should just be locks on their team. I kind of like the direction that they're going in, to be honest, of just kind of like trialing with the players that they already had, and also, with a mix and match of probably a few other players as well. I do think that overall is a good thing for them to do. But they are in a tough position, because it's like EDG, that year wasn't a disaster. They made all of the internationals. Like, that's something. That's good, but yeah, it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, but they could end up with 3 new players. They could end up with 0 new players, and nothing would really surprise me that much. But I still think they'll be pretty good. But again, like, winning a trophy wise, that's too hard to predict. Let's move on to Snowy. Thoughts on Miniboo leaving Team Heretics? I think it makes sense for Team Heretics, because I think the thing that Team Heretics struggle with, right, is consistency, right? We know that they can be an unbelievable team on their best day, but they can also be really, really bad on their worst day. And I think that Miniboo contributes to that quite a lot, because I think he, more than anyone else on the team, is perhaps the most inconsistent, right? On his day, unbelievable. On a bad day, yeah, really not that great. So I can understand why they would think, like, we need a more consistent duelist. Even if the ceiling isn't as high as Miniboo, as long as they're just more consistent, the rest of the team then, if they're playing well, can overcome, like, a player who's playing okay at the duelist level, right? And it's just winning enough of those first duels and stuff like that. So I can understand that from Team Heretics' point of view. I think from Miniboo's point of view, he can go to some other team. He should definitely get onto another team. He's easily good enough. Team Heretics might end up being worse, honestly. If they pick up the wrong person, they could easily end up being worse. Because I think Miniboo is just a good player, right? And whoever he goes to will be getting a good tier 1 level player. And if you're another team that isn't Team Heretics, having someone like Miniboo on your team who potentially does have a really high ceiling could be really good. Because if he's on a team that, kind of has like mid-level expectations, or it's like, oh, we make playoffs, maybe we threaten to go to internationals. Well, if Miniboo's on form, he takes you from maybe threatening to, you are definitely going to that international, right? Which for some teams could be like a very big deal, right? For a team like Heretics, who are already like, we need to win tournaments, right? Having someone that's super inconsistent, maybe isn't what they need. But for someone, who has perhaps a lower expectation, having someone who maybe goes and pops off and carries you, like, that's good, right? It can be different for different teams in terms of the fit. So, yeah, I think Miniboo should easily get onto another team and will probably be pretty good, because I think he is pretty good. Thoughts on Spirits being the best duelist player in China and Rare Atom losing another Ascension Grand Final? So Spirits isn't the best duelist player in China, because the best duelist player in China is whoever Wolves sign, unless it's Spirits, and then it is Spirits. Rare Atom losing another Ascension Grand Final is really rough. I mean, 3 in a row is about as bad as it gets. I mean, it couldn't be worse, really, could it? I think the thing, obviously, like here in the West, you know, like Chinese Ascension just feels like different. It's a different world, right? Which is interesting because I do think, you know, when it came to, because this is what it was like in 2021 and 2022-ish as well, I would say. It felt like even the Pacific teams were kind of like over there, right? Like if you were from the West, you knew the main EMEA teams, you knew the main Americas teams, or North American teams, perhaps, and probably Loud. But other than that, well, maybe Crew as well. Other than that, you know, the Pacific teams was like before Paper X started, you know, making deep runs, it was like, oh, Paper X, right? Who are they? Who are these Japanese teams? Who are these, you know, whoever it might be, you know, Zersha, whatever it is, right? And obviously throughout like 2021, 22, we saw them get some upsets. But once partnership started and like we had Pacific, I feel like people's knowledge level, and you can actually see this in how Plat Chat works as well, by the way. So think about Plat Chat. In 2020, you go back and watch like pre-partnership Plat Chat, they probably do not talk about any Asian teams unless it's like a direct qualification for an international or at an international, right? Nothing else gets talked about. But if you watch Plat Chat now, right, or even VODfathers, or, you know, you play VFL or whatever it is, right? We talk about Pacific, you know, as much as we talk about the, you know, EMEA or Americas, right? Maybe even this year more about Pacific because we thought it was the best region, right? So with that in mind, you know, I do think that now we've got kind of 3 regions, but China is now the kind of separate part that people don't talk about. Because I was thinking about this, like China is so big in Valorant, like, oh, sorry, Valorant is seemingly very big in China, right? So if you think about that for Rare Atom, like getting into like this is a big esport in a market that is like massive. Like they're going on a roadshow in China because they can afford to do that, because they know that people will turn up and it will pay for itself and it will be sick, right? Whereas they can't do that in the other regions because it wouldn't work. And so they are missing out quite a lot. Like that is, like if you're the Orgo in a Rare Atom, that is very rough if you think about that. Like that is really, really crazy. Okay, let's move on to Mongu. Will I ever consider signing for a team as coach analyst, and what team? Well, what team would not be really up to me, would it? I wouldn't. I don't have enough clout to go, I'm going to sign with you. I don't think that is quite how it works, even as a content creator, let alone a coach or analyst. But yeah, we've kind of already talked about this a little bit, so I won't bore you anymore. Nick Knight 999 says, when am I gonna queue for ranked on Steam? I assume that is meant to say stream. I'm going to be honest with you, Nick Knight. I have never really enjoyed playing solo queue Valorant. I don't think it's a particularly fun experience. And I don't think that my gameplay would be particularly interesting to watch. So yeah, it's just not something that I'm that like if I was going to play, you know, Valorant on stream, it would either be in, you know, 5 stacks with Sideshow or whoever else, and or Throw City, right? Because I think like the enjoyment that I get from the game, like I enjoy IGLing a game, right? I enjoy, you know, talking to my team and saying, let's do this, you know, let's try this, you know, try that. I enjoy that part of the game. That part of the game I think is what I find fun, but it doesn't work in solo queue ranked because people won't listen, right? They just do whatever they want. And so yeah, it's just something that, I mean, even throughout my Valorant history, like I've always just either played it with friends or, you know, I've never really been one for solo queue ranked. And I don't think that will change, to be honest, because I have other games that I'd rather play solo on my own, if I'm being honest. Okay, Confused Pengu. Would you ever consider making a series or something in the off-season around a premier team you make and seeing how well you do? So this is an interesting question. And when they first announced Premier and during the 2023 season, I really did start formulating pretty detailed plans about doing this exact thing you are saying. Things have changed since, though. I mean, it would still be a fun idea. The things that have changed really, though, is the Valorant calendar, right? If you think back to 2023, we had a mega off season, right? That was a good 5 months of nothing to do whatever you wanted. And so during 2023, I thought about it, but it was almost like I didn't have time to like fully put it all together because, you know, like everything was kind of coming out at that point, so I didn't quite have time to kind of put everything together to do it. But now, like, the season ends much later. The season starts quite a bit earlier. There's game changes, there's ascension, there's off-season tournaments. Now I'm honestly not sure I would have the time, right? In terms of like actually playing all the premier games week to week and doing all that and coming up with the team. Like, it's possible I could, but it would be harder than it was in 2023 for me. And so that, again, is something that like I have considered and would like to do because it would be fun. But yeah, probably not right now. But maybe as like an idea for my next esports org. Maybe that'll be an idea I consider with them, so someone else can edit it. Let's move on to this topic: maps. You told on Vote Fathers that more maps should have little changes like Abyss to feel fresh and better. Yes. Is this also possible for maps like Breeze and Icebox? So this might be a bit of a hot take depending on what you think on these maps, but in my opinion, Breeze is closer to being a good map than Icebox is. I think Breeze wouldn't need that many changes. I think on Breeze, if you closed halls like they did before, I think if you closed halls, I mean, yeah, you do kind of need to close. But maybe if you even didn't close halls, but significantly just change the A site to make it much easier to defend actually on site, then maybe that's possible. I mean, you could leave halls open and also change how A main works to make it more defense-sided as well. So yeah, I think the Breeze is actually salvageable though. I really do. I actually don't think that B needs that much work. I think B plays out kind of fine, to be honest. It's just the A side of the map that really needs kind of some changing, and maybe mid a bit. But yeah, I think the Breeze is fixable. Icebox would need some significant changes. I think Icebox mid to A would need a significant rework, a very like big changes, I would think. And also probably just all sides of mid need changing. They also need to change how the B site works, in terms of changing where you can plant, but then also probably making it easier to get to that plant spot. So yeah, Icebox I think just needs a lot of work to make it a good map, because I just think that like fundamentally like it doesn't make sense as a map. Like it's just, and this is the thing with Icebox, right? That when Icebox came out, I'm pretty sure one of the things that they wanted with Icebox was like, here's a map that is more about verticality and aim, right? Like that's what this map is. But I just think that doesn't make, like, it's an open vertical map, but I just think that doesn't make for good maps in Valorant. Like most of the good maps in Valorant aren't that. Basically, and the ones that are more like that tend to be the one that people don't like, right? They don't like Breeze as much, they don't like Abyss as much. The ones that are more, the more Icebox you go, the generally the less people like the map, I think. Because, and I think the Icebox is just like the worst case because it is Icebox. Next question. Will I look for a new org? Yes. Go and at your favorite orgs, owner, to get them to sign me. And say pay him lots of money. Lots of money. Okay. Give me a second. We've ran out of space. Let me. Oh yeah, I remember how I did this now. I just typed in there. Right. Fabio asks, was 2025 a good year overall for Valorant? Agents Tournament Maps Tier 2. Tier 2 I can't speak about too much because I haven't been keeping up with it as much this year. Let's talk about Tier 1. 2025, was it a good year? It was a good year in terms of the calendar. It had, I think, Champs was a good event. I think Toronto was a pretty good event. And Bangkok was a pretty good event with an insane grand final. So was it a good year? I think the internationals I would give a B plus. I think overall, maybe A minus even. Good. I think we had some good internationals this year overall. I do think Wolves carried Toronto. I think without Wolves, Toronto would have been a lot worse, but with Wolves, and it did happen, I think Toronto was good. In terms of like agents and meta, obviously Teo is kind of the big mark against this year, you might say, in a sense, because, you know, obviously he just came out and was way too strong. I mean, look, I personally think Vice was also too strong. Yoru was too strong. Omen was too strong. So yeah, like meta-wise, whilst it was kind of good in terms of there was a lot of open stuff to play, I do think there was quite a few problems, particularly earlier on during the Teo meta. So yeah, that was a bit of a problem. But once Teo got nerfed, you know, it did get better, right? It became fairly open. So that was. There's been worse years. I think maybe 2024 was therefore a little better, but in terms of like, I think teams got more, and maybe this is just the case because there's just more options now, right? Like if I think about it, like there wasn't a lot of mirror matches, but maybe part of that was just because, like, you know, like for instance, let's say your Sentinel on Ascent, right? Before you only had two options with Killjoy or Cypher. Maybe now you've got a third option in Vice, right? So you are just naturally going to get some differences because you have another option now. So maybe that's part of it as well. But it wasn't, other than Teo, it wasn't terrible. Maps wise, we had quite a lot of map rotation. Now I know that Bren on Plat Chat was, you know, quite against that in general. And like, it's a bit of a trade-off, right? For me personally, as someone who watches a ton of Valorant, I would rather see probably slightly overall quality a little bit worse, but with fresher maps. For me, I would prefer that, but I can understand that if you prefer, I would prefer, you know, keeping the same map pool all throughout the year and then, you know, having an insane Champs Grand Final because, you know, the teams are so good at all the maps. Like, yeah, that's a reasonable take. I'm not saying that is wrong in any way. It's just for someone who watches like all the games, I would probably get a little bit bored of, you know, seeing the same stuff all the time because like during Champs, for instance, I was actually excited to see Abyss, even though it was kind of, you know, I don't think it's that great of a map, but the changes now hopefully will help quite a lot. But, you know, I was actually excited to watch Abyss again. Which would the only map I wouldn't get excited for is Icebox. That is the only map that I feel like there is no excitement here because I know how this map plays out. There is only one way to play this map, and it's incredibly dull. So yeah, that's my opinion. But yeah, was this a good year for Valorant? I think overall, again, you'll get rose tinted glasses about the past. I think this probably was the best year because I don't think that tournaments overall last year were as good as this year, and I think that the calendar is just again a little bit better, and I think again the calendar is probably going to get a little bit better with like triple elimination kickoff as well next year, so I'm looking forward to next year as well. But yeah, I think this was a good year. Okay, next question. Let's see. What was your favorite moment during your time at Ascend? We kind of talked about that. You know, I still remember early in the days, before I technically signed for Ascend, I went on to watch an Ascend game on Bind. I remember early in my Ascend days when I was watching them, I had like every time I watched Ascend, they won for like the first 10 games that I watched them. And then I didn't watch them for like a couple of weeks for whatever reason. And they had lost in those in-between weeks. And so I was kind of like a good luck thing. I do remember that vividly. So that was quite fun, being kind of a lucky charm. But yeah, that was fun. As I talked about, you know, going to Sophia and meeting everyone, that was also quite a bit of fun as well. Okay, next one. What agent do I think has the most potential to rise next season? Personal guess, Killjoy. Killjoy is a decent guess. I don't think Killjoy's pick rate will be super high, personally, but I think it will go up. Personal guess. Well, Harbor's getting a rework. So if Harbor is good, maybe Harbor? Maybe? I mean, it can't go any lower, can it? What else would be good next? I mean, yeah, obviously like Viper and stuff. You know, there was a thought in my head, and this came away from that Lothar tier list. I'm not sure if you saw it, where Lothar had a tier list that was quite out there, I would say, and I didn't agree with all of it, but he put Brim super high, and actually did get me thinking, hold on a second. If Omen's cooldown is 40 seconds, like if they put Omen's cooldown to like 50 seconds, would everyone just start playing Brim? Because you just have the 3 smokes straight away. Like, you know what I mean? Like, at what point does Omen's cooldown become so big that you're like, well, actually, we're only going to get 3 smokes anyway, so we might as well just play Brim. You know, I did start thinking about that, but I don't think we're quite there yet, but maybe in the future. But yeah, I'm just gonna say Harbor because I'm just gonna believe that they'll break Harbor, given what they're doing recently. Next up. Oh, I can't go down. Hold on. Let me just do this. Right. When send TMV? Well, at Rob Moore. Well, you're called G2 Stent. Surely you hate Stent. Pancakes or waffles? As Flapjack. I would say pancakes out of the two of those. The manual asks, how do I feel about Lysoar leaving Wolves? I have a couple thoughts on Lysoar leaving Wolves. One is that I did think Lysoar was pretty good. I am sad at the aura lost because Lysoar just standing up is one of the best things to ever happen in Valorant, and gives them more aura in general. But there is another part of me that does think, like, is it possible to upgrade from Lysoar? Yeah, probably. He started off pretty well, but wasn't amazing. So, yeah. I'm not happy about it, but I can understand it. If you ran the lock-in bracket now with teams in champs form, what would it look like? Well, yeah, it wouldn't have Koi in it, as this person has responded here. If you ran the lock-in bracket now... Well, NRG would probably do pretty well, no? I don't know who everyone played. Oh, you mean running back the exact same lock-in bracket? If so, then probably Fnatic and NRG would do pretty good, because I remember NRG lost to Loud, so they would probably beat Loud now, if I had to guess. And then Fnatic played Na'Vi in the semi-final. And actually, to be fair, NRG played... Well, Loud played DRX, I think, in the semi-final of lock-in, so... NRG playing DRX, yeah, DRX would probably make top 4. Probably Fnatic. Na'Vi probably wouldn't make it that far, but I'm not sure who they played. But yeah, you'd probably end up with a NRG Fnatic final, to be honest, like we did with Loud Fnatic actually at lock-in, if I had to guess. So I'm going to say it would play out actually pretty similarly, funnily enough. And then we've just got 2 more questions. Just do that. One is from Duckinator. What do I think of Rare Atom getting 3-second place at Ascension? Yeah, rough. That's rough for them. That's rough, buddy. And then finally, Hiko B-Dog asks, who was the best player on Ascend whilst I was with the organization? Ascend have had some pretty good players, I think, overall. In fact, let me go back through the annals of time here and think about this. If I just remove that, let's take a trip down memory lane. Let's see, who did Ascend have back in the day? Do you have transactions on here? Yeah, so they had Elevated on their staff. Batty G was pretty good, I would say. Chiwa was pretty good. Monster was pretty good. Alive was pretty good as well. CNED, you might have heard of. He was pretty good. Starkzo, I think, was pretty good. Yeah, probably. I mean, I like the Live personally, and I've met him, so he's a nice guy. So yeah, I'm gonna say him. But yeah, that is it. That is it. It's been quite a journey here on Cosmic Divide. I hope you've enjoyed these Cosmic Divides. Obviously, it started with me and Elevated, and was fun when me and him would talk Valorant, and I don't know what he's going to do this next year, to be honest. I don't know where he's at, and now I don't know where I'm at. But yeah, I hope you have enjoyed it. Again, big shout out to Ascend and everyone, you know, who helped me on this journey, everyone who's been a part of that Ascend journey with me. What the future holds, who knows? Maybe Ascend will come back to Valorant one day, and I will happily re-sign with them if that opportunity comes up again, because they are a very well-run, nice little org, is what I would say. So go and support Acend in, you know, PUBG or whatever else other games they go into. And yeah, I just want to thank you all for watching and supporting me, because obviously by watching this, and if you've been a watcher of Cosmic Divide for a while, you know, then yeah, your support has mattered to me as always. And yeah, that's it from me. I've hit the hour mark. What a better way to close out. So thank you all for watching, and well, what the future holds, we shall see. But go and bug your favorite esports manager to come and sign TMV.